and welcome to another educational video about screen printing by Catspit Productions. Today is the screen coating tips video. You guys sent in some video clips that showed me a little bit about how you coat screens. So today we're going to take a quick look at some clips, and I will give some tips based on what I see. And you know, some of it may be just tips and advice, or some of it may be just something in the video made me think of it. So we're not critiquing or criticizing anybody here. Everybody did a really great job in making their videos, and thank you very much for submitting them. Without you guys you know, interacting with me here on YouTube, we couldn't do this kind of thing. So thank you very much for participating, to you all who participated. And we're just going to take a look at your videos, and you know, whatever pops in my head as far as tips and stuff for coating screens, I'm going to give them to you. Okay, and each person will get a Catspit t-shirt, and one person is going to get the emulsion and the scoop coater I'll donate to, and then everybody else is going to get a t-shirt and a little something that I'll pull off of the shelf, some of my samples and stuff. I'll give everybody a little something, and maybe if I can help it, something that might help you from what I see in your video. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the first video of you know, a little bit about how this person coats their screens. Okay, so let's check it out.
So scoop coaters look like this. Mine's a little bit dirty right now, but here I have a smaller version, so you can see that there's two lips. So the first lip is like thinner. It's the side we'll be using today, and the one's thicker. You might be using those for other projects. I'm gonna do the other side.
That video clip was from YouTube user Solo2, and I liked your little screen jig, the little jig that you have that holds the bottom of the screen in. I like that. That's pretty cool. That might be an interesting little device that you could make at home. Obviously, a little piece of flat wood with two pieces on either side, you know, and it kind of helps hold it up. You know, that was a very cool thing. I would say that keeping your scoop coater clean is critical. Okay, it is so important that you keep your scoop coater clean, and this one here is actually the scoop coater that I use in my shop, and I'm going to show you these two up close because we're also going to talk about the thin and thick side. But it is imperative and critical that you keep the scoop coater clean. So that means every time you use it, you're going to want to wash it and clean it so that it looks like brand new again. Okay, and you have to be very careful not to get any nicks, scrapes, dents, damage, any damage to the edge of the scoop coater. What do you want to call it? A blade or an edge, the scoop coater edge. Both of the sides, for a dual side, both of them have to be, you know, kept very well. It's like a precious little tool, okay? And it may be like a surgeon's scalpel, right? And you got to treat that with real care and keep it clean and take good care of it, right? So that's what you need to do with a scoop coater, okay? So it is true. Okay, we're going to take a look. There is a thick and thin side. The thicker side tends to lay down more emulsion. The thinner side tends to lay down less emulsion. All right, and the other thing is that yes, we have what we call the inkwell side of the screen, and we have what we call the substrate side of the screen. This is very easy to remember, okay? The inkwell side is where you're going to put the ink and the squeegee blade. And it has, you know, it's a depressed area. So this is what we call the inkwell side of the screen. This side, which is the side that comes in contact with your t-shirt or other item that you're going to screen print, is called the substrate side. And the reason why is because the substrate, technically speaking, is what we are printing. Okay, so technically speaking, the substrate side comes in contact with the substrate, meaning the item that you are printing. Here's a very cool video clip from Hip Hop Fiend 710. That's his YouTube username. And remember, you want to work in red or yellow safe lights when you're coating your screens. Here you can see Hip Hop Fiend doing his thing, filling his scoop coater, getting set up to work, and you can see he took the time to pour the emulsion in the scoop coater very evenly and leveled it off before coating. And then you can actually see he starts with the substrate side first, and then he does the inkwell side, and then eventually, of course, we're going to set it in a screen rack so that the substrate side is down so that it can dry. Okay, so this is a pretty cool video clip. Nice screen coating from Hip Hop Fiend 710. Let's take a look at the next video clip. Okay, this one's from YouTube user Todd Bulemore, I think is how we would pronounce that, and I have some cheat notes over here, of course. So let's take a look at this video from Todd Bulemore.
Hi Jonathan, my name's Todd from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I wanted to say that actually your giveaway was great timing because I've actually had some questions about coating screens and just see if there's anything I can improve. I've tried a couple different ways, light coats, heavy coats, and just still trying to dial that in. So I'll show you kind of what I got. Here's one of my screens with the light coat. And then I got another one here with a heavy coat. So hoping I can improve things, but for real, what I'm actually using is just some aluminum stock. It works pretty good.
For this, I do a 1-1 pass for pretty much all the mesh counts. Okay, so I'll do, one pass, whether it be 110 mesh, 230 mesh, or whatever mesh. Okay, it is true that we do the substrate side first, then we do the inkwell side because we want to push the emulsion towards the substrate side, right? And then we're going to dry it like this, okay? But the easier way to get a higher printed ink volume, a higher volume of ink printed, if that makes sense, rather than trying to build up the emulsion so much here, because you're only talking about micrometers really when you're talking about layers of emulsion, you want to have your setup proper, meaning a good screen, tight mesh. What other notes did I make? You have to have the proper mesh count. Make sure you have the proper mesh count. Make sure your squeegee diameter is correct for what you're printing. And most importantly, that the screen is set up properly on press, meaning you have off contact, the palette is parallel to the screen, and you have the off contact and with your tight mesh, okay, and the proper squeegee, the correct mesh count. All of those things are going to really, really dramatically affect the amount of ink printed as compared to simply trying to build up the emulsion. Simply building up the emulsion, probably, honestly, you're not going to really see that as much as if you take the time to use the proper screen, proper mesh count, yada, 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 and set it up all properly on press. That's really where you're going to see the higher ink volumes printed with less or the least effort, okay? All right, so, okay, let's, the next one, let's take a look at this next clip. All right, this clip is from YouTube user Eddie Moon.
All right, this is where I coat my emulsion. It was right behind me from where I was talking from earlier. Just make sure you don't coat your emulsion on carpet. It does get a little messy. It does come off, but just you don't want to deal with it. Try to find a floor that's a little slicker, like a wood floor, or bathroom floor, kitchen floor. I use this coater, scoop coater. I use the thinner side, and I do a one pass. I do a 1-1 pass. I do one on the outside and one on the inside. The reason you do that is because you coat the outside. Bam! You push all the emulsion on this side, and then you want to push the emulsion back out to the printing side. So you push it out, and it's pushed out. And then you're going to wait for the emulsion to slowly, evenly gather, and then you're going to pull back. And just slightly scrape and pull. There's the first side. Then, after you do the outside, you do the inside because you want to push all the emulsion out to the stencil side, to the print head. So, you're going to pull slowly, tilt back, and finish. There you have it, a coated screen.
Alright, so this video clip was a great example of how you can work at home and kind of use whatever space you have available. Eddie actually uses the bathroom to stack his screens and let them dry in the dark. Okay, so coating the screens, basically you don't necessarily need a dark room per se. You can use any room that you can darken and work in. And then the most critical part that is probably the hardest is having a place that stays dark all the time that you could put the screens in to dry. And you ideally want to put them in like this, substrate side down. So if you had to, you could do, you can just stack them like Eddie did. We'll hopefully that clip is in there. Okay, so you can stack them up and basically use any room in the house that you can use subdued light or a yellow party light or anything like that will be sufficient to coat your screens. Okay, and again, yeah, the thin side, you got the thick side and the thin side. Generally speaking, the thick side will coat more emulsion, the thin side will leave less emulsion. We most often will use the thin side, okay, because remember, the more emulsion that you coat on the screen, the more difficult it is to correctly expose that screen. In other words, because the thicker layer of emulsion is harder to expose all the way through because it's just thicker, okay? So it'll take longer exposure times, it can be harder to get detail and blah, 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 okay? So generally speaking, unless you have some technical reason that you know what you're doing, I would tell you to use the thin side only, okay? The thick side is not something that you would use on any regular basis, all right? All right, so the other thing is, let me refer to my cheat notes here, but I think we're going to talk about, yeah, the coat. And I think I've talked about this before. When you have the emulsion in your scoop coater, you're going to get the scoop coater up, and right away you got to flip it up to the screen and get the angled part of the black ends. These are angled for a reason. The reason they're angled is so that you can bring the coater up against the screen perfectly and you have the perfect angle. So those black cap ends, okay, should be flush against the mesh. So when you come in with your scoop coater with emulsion, you're going to be almost up. You're going to get it in here, flap it up. You're going to wait until the emulsion, you can tilt down a little bit, wait until the emulsion comes in complete contact with the mesh, all the way from black end cap to black end cap. Once it does, then you're going to apply pressure and come up the screen. When you come up to the top, as you come up to the top, you're going to start to tilt this back and also tilt the scoop coater off of the mesh. But don't take it off of the mesh yet. Wait a little, a couple seconds. Allow time for the emulsion to settle back into the scoop coater before you take it off. And that little noise is basically I'm using a little pressure and I'm scooping upward a little bit as I pull it off. But the critical thing here is that when you come up and pull the scoop coater back and you tilt up, you need to allow time for the emulsion to settle back into the trough. If you don't and you pull it away, you know what's going to happen, right? Big mess. Big to-doings. Big mess of emulsion everywhere. Don't you hate when that happens? Okay, so you're going to be upright, come in, slap it on, lower, up, come up, tilt up, back. You can even, if your end caps are secure, you can even slightly from side to side and off. Okay, if your end caps are not glued, be careful, you could knock one off.
I start inkwell side, then I'll hit the print side, and then I'll come back on the inkwell side and just shear it off one more time. And that zip means you're hitting it with the right amount of pressure. return our excess emulsion back to the bucket. A lot of these scoop coaters you can take the sides off, but somewhere along the line someone decided to glue these on here, so that's no longer an option for me. Another reason I could use a new one. So I improvised, made a little cardboard wedge, wrapped it in some packing tape, and I just used that to scoop out the remainder right back into the bucket. So that's coating screens. Gonna go rinse this guy out and try to put it somewhere where it won't get dinged up so I don't get any more lines running up my screens.
Alright, that video clip was from YouTube user Dip Schlitz. He is also an active forum member on the CatSpit Learn How to Screen Print forum at catspitproductionsllc.com. Okay, alright, so a couple points here that I'll mention is, first of all, use decent pressure when you're doing this. Okay, when you're coating screens, you need to apply some pressure, okay, down on the screen here. So if you need a jig, now there are some people I've seen on YouTube actually put the screen up against the wall, and then there's a chuck or something that's in the, on the floor, and it chucks it in so that they can, if they don't have enough strength, do it like this. But I do it like this. So when I do it, when I coat, you want to hear that mesh. You kind of want to hear that noise, all right? If that's not enough pressure, you need to give it some pressure, and you want to hear a little bit of that mesh scraping against the blade. Obviously, with emulsion, it's going to sound a little different, or less possibly, but the idea is that the more, generally speaking, more pressure when you're doing this is better than less pressure. When you use less pressure, you have problems in uneven emulsion, uneven coating of the emulsion. Okay. Secondly, unused emulsion in the scoop coater can totally go back into the bucket, no problem. Just make sure there's no dirt, dust, or debris, and you can scoop it right back into the bucket any which way you want. Get it out into the bucket, close the bucket, and it's good for next time. You do not have to throw out the emulsion that's left over in the scoop coater. Put it back in your bucket, and it's fine. If it got dirt or something in it, you might want to chuck it. Okay? And then again, we're going to go to this thing again, is always clean your scoop coater immediately after use. You want to make sure this thing is cleaned to the point of being brand new again, okay? So every time you use your scoop coater, you're going to clean it and treat it like it's a delicate tool. Remember, it's like the surgeon's scalpel, or the policeman's cruiser, or the newsman's microphone. I mean, this tool is critical to a screen printer, and even if you wrap it in a towel, I mean, you should take extra steps to make sure that your scoop coater does not get damaged. Although, you can buy a new one for anywhere from $20 to $35. So, I mean, it's not that expensive of a tool, and if you don't have one, I would suggest getting one from catspitscreenprintsupply.com. Okay, so, all right, they're not all that expensive, all right, but you can, I've had this for years, okay, take good care of it, and it will last you for many, many years, okay, but treat it as a delicate tool, delicate, okay. All right, so let's take a look at the last video clip today. Look at my little cheat sheet here, and this video clip is from YouTube user LindaTisha Bentley.
Filled in the bottom and just kind of let it settle, get those bubbles out. See the bubbles? They're pretty much, I find if I rock it back and forth, the bubbles kind of grab hold of the front, and then when I pull it back, they pop. So, like a 45-degree angle. Put my scoop coater up against the mesh and let the emulsion fall back till it's all the way across. And then in one sweep, I tip my screen back to about 90 degrees and watch the emulsion fall back into the scoop coater. And there's that. I got one side done. It's pretty clear. The screen isn't really tight at the top, so you can kind of see where it's bubbling up. Then I do the same thing on the other side. Turn it around, tilt it back about 45 degrees. Lay my scoop coater, match it up evenly where I did the other one. And then let the emulsion run down. I didn't put a lot in here, so it's taking a second. Drag it up to the top. And scoop it back. There's that. I have a screen ready to burn.
Okay, so very cool. Let's remember that you want to fill the scoop coater well. Okay. Using too little emulsion can be a little bit difficult to work with, and on the same note, using too much emulsion can be difficult to work with. So you have to get comfortable with a kind of full level that's full enough for you to work with, that makes it easy to work with so that you can coat a few screens without having to fill again, and not too full so that it spills over the edges when you're working. Okay, if the scoop coater is too full, generally what will happen is the emulsion will come out of the scoop coater before you even get to the mesh when you're trying to get here, and then once it comes down and hits the mesh, it has a very likely chance of going over the ends, the black end caps. Okay, so if there's too much emulsion, it'll create a little bit of a mess. If there's too little emulsion, it'll be more difficult for you to coat the screen. Okay, so that is something that you may have to play with a little bit and figure out where the most comfortable level of emulsion is for you and your scoop coater. Okay, but just keep that in mind. All right, and also on the same note, bubbles. Bubbles were mentioned, and in my experience, bubbles are not as much of a problem as a lot of people seem to have with them for me, and maybe it depends on the emulsion, the thickness of the emulsion, but generally speaking, I've noticed when I work, the emulsions, the little bubbles that I have in the emulsion, if there are any left after you let it settle, normally when I do the coat, the bubbles don't transfer to the mesh necessarily for me. For some people they do. So in that case, you have to let the trough settle and you have to wait until the bubbles are gone. Okay, if you're having that problem. If you're having a problem of where the bubbles transfer from the trough, the scoop coater, to the screen, and it causes imperfection and defects in the emulsion, then you're going to literally have to shake this thing a little bit, do whatever you have to do to get it to settle down and pop those bubbles before you coat. But it may be worth, depending on what emulsion you have, you might, it may not transfer. The bubbles may or may not transfer to the mesh. Okay? And lastly, let's mention that part of the equation to making a good screen is a good screen. Okay, so I can't emphasize this enough. This screen right here, $21.95, I believe it is. CatSpitScreenPrintSupply.com. All right, no, sorry, seriously. Seriously though. This can make or break you on press, and it can also make or break you when you're coating. So if the mesh is loose, if the tension in the mesh varies from side to side or from top to bottom, then when you coat your screen, the edge of the scoop coater is not going to be really making full contact with the mesh. Right? Because even though you try to put a little extra pressure, maybe it's loose in the middle. So the ends of the scoop coater are making good contact with the sides, but the middle's loose. So the middle of the blade is not really touching. So you have a heavy deposit of emulsion in the middle and thinner deposit on the side. So if you have loose mesh or a frame that is wiggly and not tight, and when you coat, you're noticing that there's different, variations in thickness or in darkness of the emulsion, or it looks like, uneven coating, well, that's probably the culprit, is simply the screen itself. Because you need a good frame with tight mesh. Nice tight mesh, okay? Really can't overemphasize that enough. And when you use a good scoop coater with a good screen, you put that pressure on there, you're going to get a little pressure, and you're going to get a much more even coat of emulsion. Okay? So, you know, sometimes using the right tools for the job or spending a couple bucks, you know, it'll make your life so much easier, okay? So, you got to keep that in mind. All right, I think that's it for today. This was a very complicated, complex video for me to do. I didn't really realize it until I really dived in to do it. So I want to thank you all very, very much for participating. It was a lot of fun. It's very cool. Don't forget, everybody is going to get a t-shirt, and everybody is going to get a little something. Okay, one guy I'm going to pick out to get the McDermott scoop coater and the emulsion. Okay, and I haven't picked that out yet. I want to try to see who needs the most help, okay? And I think everybody, you know, because I'm a softie, everybody's going to probably get more than they should because I want to try to help you guys, all right? So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope everybody enjoyed participating. For those of you who participated, please make sure you are in communication with me so I can make sure I have your address, and if I need to get your shirt size or anything like that, make sure you're communicating with me, and you can get messages through YouTube, okay? I think that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot. Please visit catspitscreenprintsupply.com if you need screen printing equipment or supplies. Thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you next time.